War is a machine that eats men and metal alike. In 1944, France was its latest meal. The thunder of artillery rolled across the countryside, villages burned, and soldiers learned that luck often ran out faster than fuel. Through that storm crawled a Sherman tank the crew called Iron Maiden, scarred, loud, and stubbornly alive. Inside sat 4 men who trusted each other more than the ground beneath their tracks. Lieutenant Harris commanded, his voice sharp and calm even under fire. Corporal Davis drove with hands blistered from the steel controls. Private Miller manned the gun, eyes always hunting through the narrow periscope slit. And then there was Sergeant Jack Turner, the mechanic, the fixer, the man who refused to believe that anything built by human hands couldn't be made to run again. They had been on the move for days, pushing towards Saint-Lô, through hedgerows that hid German guns like wolves in tall grass. Mud caked their boots, sweat stung their eyes, and every breath carried the taste of exhaust and cordite. The tank rattled, coughed, and groaned with every bump, but Jack listened like a doctor to a heartbeat. "She's fine," he'd mutter, tapping a gauge, "just tired." The morning air was gray with mist when the order came to advance. Allied artillery thundered in the distance. The Iron Maiden led the second column, its treads chewing through mud and shattered stone. Birds scattered from the trees as the rumble of engines shook the valley. Then, without warning, the sky screamed. A German shell landed close, showering dirt and shrapnel. The crew ducked instinctively. Another blast followed, and another, each one closer. "Panzer guns on the ridge," Miller shouted. Harris barked coordinates. Davis slammed the throttle. The Sherman swung to return fire, the main gun roaring once, twice. But before the third shot could load, the engine let out a deep, metallic groan. It coughed, sputtered, then went silent. The silence was worse than the explosions. "Engine's dead," Davis cried. "Try again," Harris ordered. Jack twisted the ignition. Nothing, just a hollow click. Smoke curled from the rear vents. The tank sat exposed in open ground, a perfect target. Another shell struck nearby, rocking the chassis. Harris made the only choice he could. Everyone out. They tumbled into the mud, dragging weapons and a toolbox. Behind them, the Iron Maiden stood still, black smoke rising like a funeral flare. German fire raked the road. The men took cover behind the broken wall of a farmhouse, gasping for breath. Harris grabbed the radio. Static. The line was dead. Their unit had already moved beyond the village. No backup, no rescue, just them, a crippled tank, and an enemy closing fast. Jack peered through the smoke at the tank. His hands twitched. "She's not gone," he said quietly. "Jack, forget it," Harris barked. "We have to move." But the mechanic didn't move. "If we leave her, we're dead anyway." Before anyone could stop him, Jack sprinted toward the Sherman, bullets kicking up dirt around his feet. He dove behind the tank, ripped open the engine hatch, and stared inside. The smell of burnt oil hit him like a wall. The drive shaft was cracked, a fuel line split wide. It was hopeless, but hopeless wasn't a word he recognized. He shouted back to his crew, "Bring me anything metal, anything that bends or bolts." Davis and Miller exchanged looks, then ran to the ruins, searching through wreckage. Jack's hands moved with the speed of instinct. Wrenches, wire, a broken gear, anything could serve a purpose. He had patched engines before, but never under shell fire. Another explosion shook the ground. Dirt rained from the sky, pattering on the hull like heavy rain. The others yelled for him to get back. Jack didn't answer. He worked in rhythm with the thunder, every strike of his wrench timed between the screams of incoming shells. He scavenged a metal rod from a destroyed German half-track, sawed it down with a field knife, and jammed it into place as a makeshift coupler. He stripped electrical wire from the radio, twisting it into fuel line clamps. Every move was a gamble, every spark a risk, but the mechanic's eyes burned with focus. Inside his head, he talked to the tank as if it were alive. "Come on, girl. Don't let me down now." Minutes felt like hours. Sweat ran into his eyes, turning mud to streaks of red and black on his face. Then, through the chaos, he heard it, the faint cough of an engine trying to breathe. Once, twice. He slammed the panel shut, jumped inside, and hit the starter. The engine roared back louder than any explosion around them. Harris and the others stared in disbelief. "He did it!" Miller shouted. They sprinted from cover and leapt inside. The Iron Maiden lurched forward, treads clawing through the mud. The Germans, caught off guard, hesitated just long enough. "Target the ridge," Harris commanded. Miller fired. The shell flew straight and true, smashing into a German gun nest. Flames erupted. Another round followed, then another. The tank stormed forward, black smoke trailing behind it like a battle flag. By afternoon, the road to So-Lo was clear. The Allied column moved again, and the Iron Maiden rumbled back into friendly territory, battered but victorious. Mechanics gathered around, staring at the patchwork welds welded from scrap. One whistled softly. "Who the hell fixed this thing?" Jack wiped grease from his face and said, "She fixed herself. I just gave her a reason." They laughed, half in disbelief, half in respect. Word spread through the ranks faster than gunfire. Soldiers started calling him the Mad Mechanic, and the event itself, the miracle of So-Lo. That night the crew camped near a ruined orchard. The air still smelled of smoke. Harris sat beside the tank, helmet off, watching the stars blink faintly through drifting clouds. "You know," he said quietly, "we should have died out there." Jack leaned back against the hull. "Maybe, but I couldn't leave her. She's part of us." "You talk about that tank like she's alive," Davis chuckled. "She is. You just have to listen close enough." Silence settled over them, heavy but peaceful. Somewhere far off artillery flashed on the horizon, but for once it felt distant. The Iron Maiden ticked softly as the engine cooled, a heartbeat fading into rest. Harris looked at the patchwork welds glinting under moonlight. "You know, Command's going to want to see that engine, probably give you a medal." Jack shook his head. "Let them give it to the tank." They laughed quietly. For a brief moment, war seemed far away. They passed a canteen, shared a joke about home, and tried to forget the faces they'd left behind. But rest in war never lasts long. Before dawn, the sound of distant engines rolled through the valley again. Enemy armor was regrouping beyond the river. Orders would come soon. Jack stood, stretching sore muscles, staring at the tank. Its surface was scarred and pitted, but solid. He ran a hand along the armor and smiled. "You're not done yet, girl. We've got more work to do." Harris overheard and grinned. "You really are mad." "Maybe, but sometimes madness keeps the engine running." The first light of morning crept over the fields. Mist hung low, wrapping the world in gray silence. Then a single bird called from a broken tree, and for just a heartbeat, peace returned. Jack climbed onto the tank, looking east toward the front. The Iron Maiden glimmered faintly, a ghost reborn from metal and fire. In that fragile dawn, it didn't look like a machine at all. It looked like a promise. He didn't know what awaited them beyond the next hill, only that the war wasn't finished, and neither was he. The miracle that saved them once would soon be tested again in ways none of them could imagine. Because in war, legends don't rest. They roll forward.
Dawn broke over the smoking hills of Normandy, painting the ruins in pale gold. The Iron Maiden stood silent, streaked with mud and soot, a scarred veteran of yesterday's fight. The crew had barely slept. They knew the radio would crackle soon with new orders, because war never stopped to celebrate miracles. When it came, the voice was sharp and cold. Enemy armor had regrouped beyond the river. The Allied push towards Saint-Lô had slowed, and German Tigers were holding the bridge, a steel trap waiting to snap shut. The Iron Maiden and 3 other Shermans were ordered to flank the crossing and hold it at all costs. Harris folded the map on the tank's hull. We go through these woods, cross here, and hit them from behind, fast and hard. Jack checked his patched-up engine, tightening bolts and listening to every rumble. "She'll run," he said confidently, "but don't ask her to fly." Davis smirked. "After yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if she did." The crew climbed aboard. The engine growled to life, rough but steady. As they rolled forward, trees blurred past like shadows. Birds scattered at the sound of treads grinding over fallen branches. Every man knew the enemy they were heading toward. Tigers. Heavier, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Allies had. By noon, the forest thinned. Through gaps in the trees, they could see smoke rising from the bridge ahead. The Germans had dug in deep, anti-tank guns hidden behind wrecks, machine guns sweeping the riverbank, and at least 2 Tiger tanks guarding the main road. Harris raised his binoculars. "We can't hit them head on. We'll go around that ridge." Jack frowned. "That ridge is mined." "Then we find another way," Harris said. "We're not dying here." They circled wide, using the terrain for cover. The ground trembled with each German shell that hit somewhere nearby. Over the radio came frantic chatter. Other Allied tanks had already been hit. One voice screamed before cutting out entirely. Inside the Iron Maiden, the silence was heavy. Every man understood what that meant. "Hold steady," Harris said. "Wait for my mark." Through the periscope, Miller spotted movement. A German supply truck, unguarded, parked behind the Tigers. "If we hit that," he whispered, "we'll light the whole place." Harris nodded. "Do it." Miller took aim. The gun fired. A second later, the truck erupted in flames. Ammunition inside detonated, sending fireballs skyward. The blast shook the bridge and threw the German line into chaos. "Move, now," Harris shouted. Jack slammed the throttle. The Iron Maiden burst from cover, charging straight through the smoke. Jack loaded shell after shell, his hands moving faster than thought. Miller fired again, striking an anti-tank gun before it could turn. But then came the sound they feared most, the deep growl of a Tiger's turret turning. A shell ripped through the air and slammed into the ground beside them. Dirt exploded upward. Another hit followed, glancing off their armor with a deafening clang. "She's seen us," Davis yelled. "Keep moving," Harris ordered. "Jack, give me everything she's got." Jack's eyes darted across the gauges. The patched-up engine was overheating, screaming under the strain. Steam hissed from the vents. "She's holding," he said confidently. "Barely." They slid into position behind a half-destroyed farmhouse. The Tiger loomed across the bridge, its cannon aimed directly at them. The world seemed to pause. One mistake, and they'd be vaporized. "Load AP," Harris barked. Jack slammed in an armor-piercing shell. Miller adjusted the sight, breathing slow. The Tiger fired first. The shell tore through the air, clipping the corner of the farmhouse and blasting bricks across the Sherman's hull. "Now," Harris yelled. Miller fired. Their shell hit the Tiger's side armor. It didn't penetrate, but it made the Tiger turn. "Hit him again," Jack loaded. Miller fired. Sparks flew. Another hit. The Tiger shuddered but kept coming, its cannon lowering. Harris cursed. "We need a weak spot." Jack's eyes flicked to the burning truck behind the enemy tank, the fire spreading toward its ammo crates. "Then keep him there," Harris said. "Bait him." The Iron Maiden reversed slightly, engine howling. The Tiger adjusted its aim, following. The heat from the fire shimmered between them. Then suddenly, a secondary explosion erupted behind the Tiger. The blast threw shrapnel through the air, ripping open its rear armor. Flames poured out of the beast's engine deck. The crew erupted in cheers. The bridge was theirs. But victory came with a cost. The Iron Maiden's engine temperature spiked into the red. Smoke filled the cabin. Jack slammed his hand on the dashboard. "Come on, girl, not now." The engine sputtered, coughed, and finally stopped. Davis hit the controls. Nothing. "We're dead again," Miller said, coughing through the smoke. Harris opened the hatch. "Out, now." They scrambled onto the bridge, half choking from fumes. Around them, the battlefield was chaos. Allied reinforcements pouring in, medics running, enemy fire fading. The Germans were retreating, but the Iron Maiden sat motionless, black smoke pouring from its vents. Jack stood on the bridge staring at her. The others watched as he walked back toward the tank. "Jack, leave it," Harris shouted. But he didn't. He climbed onto the engine deck and opened the hatch again. The metal was scorching hot, the smell of burning oil filling the air. He reached inside with bare hands, ignoring the pain. "She can still make it," he muttered. "She just needs one more push." Davis tries to stop him. "Jack, it's done. The battle's over." Jack shook his head. "Not for her." He ripped the rag from his sleeve, wrapped it around his hand, and started tightening a loose line. The others watched in stunned silence. A few soldiers nearby murmured that the man was insane. Then, against all reason, the engine roared back to life. The sound made everyone on the bridge turn. Jack laughed like a man possessed. "Told you she's not dead yet." The Iron Maiden rumbled forward, slowly crossing the bridge. Allied troops cheered as it passed. The battered tank that refused to die became a symbol of the day. By dusk, the enemy had fully withdrawn. The bridge was secure. Command officers gathered around to inspect the miracle machine. One colonel shook Jack's hand, saying, "You've done more than mechanics. You've made history." Jack only smiled. "Just doing my job, sir." That night, the crew rested in the open field beside their tank. The sky was red with the glow of distant fires. Miller leaned against the tread and staring upward. "Think they'll ever believe half of what we've seen?" Jack chuckled. "Doesn't matter. We know it happened." Davis added softly, "Feels like this tank's got a soul, like she wants to keep going no matter what." Jack nodded. "She does. And as long as she does, so will we." The night was calm for a while, but peace never lasted long on the Western Front. Near midnight, distant explosions rolled across the horizon again. The radio came alive with a new call: enemy forces regrouping to counterattack from the north. Harris sighed, rubbing his temples. "We just took that bridge." "Then we'll hold it again," Jack said simply. The next morning, they prepared once more. The Iron Maiden looked even more worn now. Patched armor, bullet dents, scorch marks, but she stood ready. Jack had spent the night fixing leaks, reattaching plates, whispering to the tank as if calming a living creature. When the sun rose, the crew mounted up. The engine rumbled. The same patched-up drive shaft still spun, held together by nothing but faith and wire. Yet it worked. They rolled out across the field as the first shells landed nearby. Smoke filled the sky again, and the world became fire and thunder. Through the periscope, Miller spotted advancing German infantry supported by armored cars. Harris gave the order, "Hold the line. We stop them here." The Sherman's gun thundered. The first shot struck an armored car, flipping it into flames. The second hit scattered enemy troops running for cover. The Iron Maiden roared, defiant, unbreakable. But even as they fought, Jack could hear something new in the engine, a faint knock, deep and rhythmic, like a heartbeat growing weaker. He didn't say anything, not yet. They fought until the last shell in the rack was gone, until the air around them shimmered with heat. The enemy finally fell back, leaving the bridge and the valley in Allied hands.
The fields beyond the river were a graveyard of iron and fire. The Iron Maiden rolled across the scarred earth, its treads leaving deep grooves in mud stained with oil and blood. Sergeant Jack Turner had been through battles before, but something about this mission felt different. The radio crackled constantly with updates, German reinforcements moving faster than expected, pockets of resistance appearing where none should have been. Lieutenant Harris gripped the controls, eyes scanning the horizon. "The bridge is our line. Hold it at all costs. No retreat this time."
Jack leaned over the engine panel, listening to every vibration. The patched drive shaft groaned under the strain. "She'll make it," he said quietly, "but she won't forgive mistakes." Corporal Davis and Private Miller checked weapons and ammunition. The air was thick with smoke, the scent of burning fields. Every man knew what lay ahead, a line of tigers, panthers, and enemy infantry dug deep, waiting for the moment to strike. As they approached the river crossing, explosions shattered the tense silence. The first tiger appeared, its turret swinging like a predator sizing up prey. Harris gave the order, "Engage at will, focus fire, keep moving." Miller loaded shell after shell, his hands steady despite the chaos. Jack monitored the engine, sweat pouring down his face. The Iron Maiden lurched forward, treads grinding through mud and debris. The Tiger fired. A shell struck the mud near them, throwing dirt into the cabin. Another glanced off the armor, shaking the entire tank. "Steady," Harris shouted. "Don't let her see fear." The Sherman returned fire. One hit the Tiger's side, sparks flying where the armor tried to resist. Another shell struck the rear, causing a small explosion that threw smoke into the air. The enemy paused, stunned by the audacity of a single battered Sherman standing against superior armor. Jack's hands flew across the gauges and panels. The engine rattled, leaking steam from multiple valves. "She's bleeding," he muttered, "but she's still fighting." Through the periscope, Miller saw movement, German infantry attempting to flank their position. Harris ordered, "Bring her around, take them from the side." The Sherman swerved, treads digging deep. The first wave of infantry fell under Miller's accurate fire. Smoke and dust blurred the battlefield. Explosions erupted nearby, shaking the tank as if the earth itself tried to swallow them. Suddenly, a second Tiger appeared on the ridge, cutting off their escape. Harris cursed under his breath. "We're boxed in. Jack, can she take it?" Jack's eyes flicked over gauges. The engine was close to giving out. If she can hold together for 5 more minutes, yes, but it's going to hurt. The enemy fired relentlessly. Shell after shell slammed into the ground, ricocheted off armor, and ripped through trees. One direct hit tore open part of the Sherman's turret hatch. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the cabin. The smell of burning metal was overwhelming. Jack slammed his hand on a valve, rerouting pressure and closing emergency circuits. "Hold on, girl. Just a little more." The Sherman's main gun thundered again. Another Tiger faltered, armor cracked, engine smoking. Enemy tanks began to retreat under the relentless, unexpected assault. But German infantry continued to advance. Machine guns raked the area. Shells exploded around the Iron Maiden, showering dirt and debris into the cabin. Harris shouted, giving orders. Miller fired, Davis loaded, and Jack managed the dying engine as though coaxing a wounded beast to rise again. Hours passed like minutes. The sun burned high in the sky, sweat and exhaustion coating every man. Yet the Iron Maiden never faltered. Every blast she absorbed, every hit she endured, made her legend grow among both friends and foes. Jack's hands ached. Blood ran down his arms. He adjusted panels and valves over and over, whispering to the tank, "Come on, girl, just a little further." Through the smoke, Harris saw the final obstacle, a panther blocking the valley. Its gun trained on the Sherman, ready to end the fight. "Jack," Harris said, low voice, "we can't go head on." Jack looked at the gauges. The engine was close to giving out. "Then we'll trick it." He rerouted pressure to the main hydraulics, shifting weight with precision. The Sherman lurched into the underbrush, hiding behind wrecked trucks. The Panther fired repeatedly, missing by inches. The Iron Maiden surged out, side-firing, hitting the Panther in the weak rear armor. The tank exploded, flames lighting the valley. The remaining enemy forces broke and ran. The bridge was secure. Allied infantry moved forward, cheering the battered Sherman and her crew. The Iron Maiden, scarred and smoking, had done the impossible once more. Jack climbed onto the turret, wiping soot and blood from his face. Harris climbed up beside him. "You did it, Jack. Again. Twice now." Jack shook his head. "She did it. I just kept her alive." The crew rested for a moment, staring across the battlefield. Everywhere they looked, the cost of war was clear: smoke, rubble, and fallen soldiers, but also the signs of survival and courage. At nightfall, the Iron Maiden stood silently, her engine ticking softly as it cooled. Jack inspected every bolt, every plate, making sure she would run for the next day. He knew she had limits, but she had proven that determination could defy them. Harris looked at Jack. "You really are mad." Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe, but sometimes it takes madness to survive war." They all laughed quietly. For the first time in days, the sound felt genuine. Around them, the war still raged, but for a fleeting moment, one broken tank, one stubborn mechanic, and 4 men had held a line that seemed impossible. The night was calm but heavy with tension. Jack leaned against the treads, staring into the dark. He thought about the battles to come. The Iron Maiden had survived the impossible thrice now, but the enemy was not finished. The war was far from over. And deep in his gut he felt it. The next challenge would test everything: man, machine, and the bond between them. The Iron Maiden had become more than a tank. She was a legend, a living testament to resilience. And Jack Turner, the mad mechanic, had become her voice, guiding her through fire and chaos. When dawn broke again, the crew would climb aboard one final time, knowing that their actions today would echo for years. Their enemy was strong, the odds overwhelming, but as long as the Iron Maiden roared and Jack's hands held her together, there was hope. Because legends, once forged in fire and blood, do not die quietly.